I'm going to draw 3 stacks of ellipses on my page, and I'm going to start out with an eye level line somewhere in the middle of my page. I want something I can use for reference here. Okay, so that's my eye level line. I'll label it eye level, or EL. Now I need to make some rectangles, and I'm going to start by resting this finger against the edge of my sketchbook and just using that, sort of like grip the pencil, run along the edge, and I get a straight line. There's a little woodworker's trick using my pinky to do the same. Those are going to give me perfectly vertical lines referencing the edge of my sketchbook. If I don't want to do it that way, I can just lay my ruler against the edge of the page, strike my line there. The nice thing about using my finger to do it is I can make the line as far away from the edge as I can comfortably move the pencil, and I still end up with a perfect vertical. This line, well, it looks vertical, but I don't know if I can trust it. I'm going to trust it for now. So now I have 3 spaces, and I'm just going to put bottoms on them to finish them off into rectangles. I'm referencing the ruler against the bottom of the sketchbook here. Okay, now I need to find the center of these rectangles. How am I going to do it? I'm going to show you another trick for measuring centers. This is going to come in handy when drawing in perspective later. Any rectangular object, if you put an X from one corner to the other corner across the object, it will give you dead center of that rectangle. Okay, so I have X's in all 3. That marks the dead center vertically and horizontally. Whoops. Vertically and horizontally. So now how do I find my vertical? I'm going to measure 1 1/4 and a little bit. So then I'm going to go 1 1/4 and a little bit, put a mark, 1 1/4 and a little bit, put a mark. Now if I line up those 2 lines, it should pass right through the center of that X that I made. And it almost does. My measurement may have just been a tad off. It'll be close enough for this. I can also just measure with the pencil as well. Measure there from edge to X. Tick that above and tick that same one below. This isn't as precise, but it's pretty good. I had about the same margin of error there as before. So now I have center lines in all 3 of these. I'm going to stack these ellipses on top and bottom, keeping in mind that they get wider as they go down. Right, close to the eye level, they're thin. Far away from the eye level, they're wide. All right, I'm just going to lay this in, ghosting in the air a little bit, and then kind of doing a few passes on the page. Now for these stacks, you can go ahead and ghost them in, sort of sketch them in a few times. You can see me taking several passes to get at the ellipse. It's not a one-off ellipse like we were practicing before. There I went a little too wide. This is okay. You're doing the same motion. You're just arriving a little bit slower at the ellipse, and you end up with this sketchy ellipse. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You can firm the ellipses up later in your drawing. Right now we're trying to get them to fit inside of the rectangle, and we're trying to get them to get wider as they go down. See, I'm firming this one up just a little bit. This is how you might do it in a drawing. Your arm has to be used to this movement, so that's why we practice the freehand ellipses. Now we're practicing just making them wider as we get farther away from the eye level. Here I'm putting little tick marks to help remind me about horizontal, because I know for my own self, I tend to make my ellipses leaning. If the object I'm drawing is sitting on the flat horizontal ground, then the ellipses that make it up should also be perfectly horizontal. There's a leaning ellipse. You can see the left side's a little bit higher. If I ever want to remind myself about that horizontal, I will just strike a line. And when you're drawing, in the middle of a drawing, it's a good idea to put those horizontal lines in because they can help you orient those ellipses more effectively. So here I'm going to just strike a horizontal line referring to the eye level there. Perfect horizontal. Now I know my ellipse has to touch there, and I'll even put maybe a top and bottom. Should be equal on top and bottom. Those are the dots my ellipse is going to pass through. So I'll get used to the movement through those dots, and then I'll make my ellipse in reference to those dots. Back to a freehand one right below. So that's practicing stacks of ellipses. In addition to this being more ellipse practice, it's practice making them thinner as they get closer to your eye level line and wider as they get further from your eye level line. That's the key takeaway from this exercise.